You are listening to the Vegan Breakthrough Podcast, episode number 4. And this is part 3 of our interview with Victoria Moran. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. Let's get into it. Another question that I have, I found an interesting statistics that about 2% of the current world's population is either vegan or vegetarian, but about 10% is a former vegan or vegetarian. And another statistic that says about 84% of all who tries vegan diet for themselves will eventually move back to either vegetarianism or even to eating animals. And probably the biggest problem for veganism is not conversion to veganism, but probably the retention is the biggest problem. What do you think about that?
Well, I think about it a lot, and I actually asked that very question of Dr. Neil Barnard of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine when he was here this past weekend to teach for our first Main Street Vegan Academy masterclass and advanced program that we did for graduates. And what Dr. Barnard said was very interesting. He said, when you look at that statistic, you have to put it in the same context as ex-smokers. Mm-hmm. He said people who ultimately become ex-smokers tried to quit an average of 9 times. And that so many of these vegans that backslide come back. Mm-hmm. There's also a statistic that ex-vegans consume fewer animal products than people who have never been vegan. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not good enough. If you're an animal in a factory farm or waiting to be slaughtered, it's not good enough at all. And yet in the broader statistical view, the fact that there is food for us to eat in truck stops and shopping malls all over North America and in much of the world is not because I think in the US at least, I think the statistic is nearly 3%. It's not the 3% of us that are vegan. It's all these hundreds and thousands of people who are moving a bit more, if I dare say it, plant-based than they were before. I also asked Dr. John McDougall when he was on my podcast recently about recidivism. And he said he thinks it is a lot because people just get hungry. Mm-hmm. And they don't understand that you need to eat more food. So one of the things that we impress upon our student coaches at Main Street Vegan Academy is that when they are working with individuals and they're working with groups, that they troubleshoot for all the reasons that cause recidivism. Mm-hmm. So we've got number 1, people get hungry. We need to teach them how to eat what they need to eat to just get enough calories to make this work for them. Mm-hmm. We also need to encourage people to customize, because the truth is, as much as we vegans can be very impatient with people who need to be, for example, gluten-free, mm-hmm. sometimes we just want to roll our eyes and say, oh my God, what's with the gluten? But for some people, that is a really big deal. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people go along and they're eating meat and they're eating their yogurt and they're eating their egg white omelets, and they're not really consuming much gluten. And then they become vegan and they're eating seitan-based mock meats and they're having a lot of sandwiches and whatever, and they feel terrible. And mm-hmm. they say, I just felt awful when I was vegan. It's not mm-hmm. because they were vegan. It's because they needed to deal with the gluten thing. You can be a gluten-free vegan. You can be a soy-free vegan. Mm-hmm. You can be any kind of vegan that you need to be. And number 3, and I think this is absolutely huge, is that the subtext of most people's going back to either vegetarian or omnivore, it's not what they're going to tell you. They're going to mm-hmm. tell you, I felt tired. I felt sick. My doctor said blah, blah, blah. That may be true in some cases, and that's what number 2 point was about. People need to customize and just tweak the way that they eat till they're feeling terrific. But it's going to be more than likely a relationship thing.
Mm-hmm.
As humans, we are tribal animals. We want to be accepted by the group. We don't want to be teased mercilessly, which some people are. So what we need to do is get a rock solid support system around us. So that is people in your local area, and if you're vegan in a more rural kind of place, your local area needs to have a 300-mile radius. I mean, you really need to find your people. Meetup is a fabulous institution, and if there's no meetup group for vegans, and it's good to do vegan/vegetarian, because that way you're going to get more people. You start to have a tribe, and we need that. We also can get so much help from Facebook groups. One of my favorite Facebook groups is Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness. I'm not a bodybuilder, never will be. And yet these people are so nice and so helpful and so interesting. So get your support. This is so important. I do this for the animals, and the animals speak to me. And the health part has just come along as a wonderful, wonderful bonus. The environmental part, I look out my window, the environment looks fine. It's hard for me to relate to, and yet intellectually, I know that for all humans, all animals, and all future, we've got to do this, and we've got to do it now. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm feeling a little bit tired, and this new guy that I'm dating kind of doesn't really like that I'm vegan, just fix it. Just fix it. Whatever you need to do so that you don't have to go back, because you are making the decision in your life right now. Am I going to be one of those people who saved planet Earth from destruction, or am I going to be one of the destroyers and live with the karma of that?
What you're saying is it's very, very important, especially for those who are just starting out their vegan journey, to be plugged in the movement, to be involved, to maintain the connection with other vegans, or at least with vegetarians, right?
Absolutely. And online, of course, you can connect with vegans. That's the great thing about the online world. There's so much there you can zero in. You also want to get a broad base of information on this, because there are lots of little denominations within veganism. Whether you're looking at it from the animal rights side or from the health side, there are all these people who say, my way is the only way. Please, dear friends, let me just say, nobody has the corner on the market. You go with what resonates with you. If a particular expert, a particular teacher, a particular person putting videos on Facebook makes your soul sing, then great. Focus a lot on that person, but don't go just with that person, because that's the cult mentality. You don't want to do that. The biggest expert on veganism in your life is you. And you might say, oh, I'm not an expert. I just, started doing this last week. But you are an expert on your own life. You know what foods agree with you and what foods don't. You know what you like and what you don't. You know your family history. You know where you live and what's available. You know if you've got a Whole Foods half a block away, or if you're going to have to order some stuff online to get some of the specialty vegan foods that people talk about and you don't have access to. So you are already an expert on being a vegan. Just read more, watch documentaries, and make yourself a super expert. And it's such an adventure. You're going to be so happy. And the next time you're driving in the country and get to look a cow in the eye, prepare for a very, very special experience.
What do you like about the modern vegan movement? And what do you think, what else can be improved?
Well, what I like about it, what I love about it is, that there is one.
Yes.
and that people get it. People know what this word means. They don't think we just came from some planet where Spock from Star Wars came from. So it's wonderful that we have a movement. I think that we are at possibly a critical juncture. when you're very much involved really in anything, you think everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
You think everybody is focused on what you're focused on. That's just kind of human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of vegans and plant-based people and other people in this realm believe that we are big enough that we can fracture into denominations. We're not. We all need to hang together. Now, among ourselves, individual conversations, we can talk about, olive oil, no olive oil. Is it okay to back an initiative that gives bigger cages to laying hens still in the egg industry? Or can we only hold out for 100% veganism? We can have these discussions, and they're valid discussions, and they're important discussions. But what can happen, especially online where nobody's accountable, online where you're just off sitting behind your computer screen at a coffee shop somewhere and nobody can get to you, people can be mean. And this is so shocking because we're vegans. We are supposed to be so kind, so compassionate, and so understanding that we spread that out, not only to animals in the agricultural system, we spread that out to picking up little bugs who get into our house between a piece of cardboard and a cup and take them outside. I mean, for me to take a bug outside, I have to walk down a long hallway, go down 4 flights of stairs or wait for an elevator, use a special key card to get out into a courtyard and find a wonderful flowery grassy spot to release this bug.
Mm-hmm.
I do that because I'm a vegan. Now, if I do that and then I see somebody online who disagrees with me and I call them a name, or I tell them that they're not the right kind of vegan, or that they ought to get out of the movement, that makes me somebody who ought to be in serious psychiatric care.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to be vegan, we're going to be compassionate. And that means we are compassionate to animals. We are compassionate to the people who agree with us. We are compassionate to the people who don't. We are compassionate to relatives who don't understand. We are simply compassionate because that is what this is about. And there are people, I hate to say it, in this movement who may be really compassionate to animals, but who treat people abysmally. That's not going to fly.
What are the best vegan books that you have read, the books that maybe touched you the most?
Sure. Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer, F-O-E-R, who is a novelist who writes absolutely beautifully. And when his wife was expecting their first child, he set out on a journey to discover whether or not they should raise their child omnivore, vegetarian, or vegan. And in Eating Animals, you go with him on this journey. Fascinating, beautiful book. That's one of my favorites. On the health side, How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger is really a Bible for me. It goes into the 15 major killers of people in the Western world and what the nutrition literature says are the foods that can prevent and sometimes even help to reverse these terrible plagues. So those would be my top 2, other than the ones I write myself, and that's Eating Animals and How Not to Die.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. I want to end up with you sharing a piece of guidance to people who listen to this podcast and they're interested in veganism. They want to try vegan diet, vegan lifestyle, but they're still afraid that it will be too difficult, too inconvenient for them. What piece of guidance can you give them?
I'm going to borrow something from something that has been very successful on this planet since 1935, and that is Alcoholics Anonymous and all the many 12-step programs it has spawned. And that is the idea of one day at a time, or the 24-hour plan. Because if you think about being vegan for the rest of your life, let's say you're 18, you're looking out into your life ahead. Oh my gosh, My parents are taking me to Argentina next summer. They eat a lot of meat in Argentina. What will I do? My sister is going to get married and she's going to have a wedding. Can I not eat any wedding cake? Golly, I'm going off to college and they don't have a vegan cafeteria. What will I do? One day I will meet someone and want to get married. And what if he's not vegan? And oh my gosh, I'll be pregnant. And I heard that when Natalie Portman was pregnant, she stopped being vegan. Will I have to stop being vegan? That makes it really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think, okay, this makes a lot of sense to me, makes sense in my heart, makes sense in my head, and I'm going to do this today. I'm going to do this from the time I get up today until the time I go to bed tonight. Mm-hmm. And certainly for today, I have access to sufficient food. I have access to books, documentaries, websites, blogs, YouTubes, all the things that I need to be a successful vegan today. That is renewable every day. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying don't aspire to be vegan for life. We were talking about that before. It's very important that we make this thing stick. But if you try to bring your whole life into it, it just seems too hard. But today, who can't be vegan today? We can all be vegan today.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and with our audience. It has been a great gift for us. Thank you so much. And can you share the best way people can connect with you? Of course, you said there is a website, mainstreetvegan.net, and you also have social media accounts, right?
I do. So everything is there at mainstreetvegan.net. That's kind of grand central for all that goes on here at Main Street Vegan. You can also find me at Main Street Vegan on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you like YouTube, I'm Victoria Moran, NYC.
Victoria, thank you so much for this wonderful interview. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, and may your podcast become huge. May you get 1 million downloads.
Thank you so much.
All the best.
Thank you, my friend, for being with us today. I hope you find value in today's episode. If there was anything we mentioned and you missed it, don't worry about it. We take all the notes. Simply visit veganbreakthrough.com/4 to see the show notes page. Again, I appreciate your time and we'll see you in the next episode of the Vegan Breakthrough podcast. Bye.